Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be your ticket to unimaginable wealth, and today we're diving into something that will blow your mind because what if I told you that a simple nickel from 1960, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, could be worth a staggering $66 million? Yes, you heard that right, $66 million for a 5-cent piece that most people would have spent on candy or tossed into a piggy bank without ever realizing they were holding a fortune that could buy mansions, yachts, and change their entire family's future forever. This isn't fiction, this isn't a fairy tale, this is the incredible reality of the 1960 Jefferson Nickel, and before we dive deep into why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, let me tell you something that will keep you glued to this video because the 1960 nickel is just the beginning of our journey today. We have 6 more Jefferson Nickels lined up, each one more valuable and more mysterious than the last, with values climbing even higher into territories that will make your jaw drop, so stick with me until the very end because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly what to look for, you'll understand why these coins are worth more than most people's houses, and you might just discover that you're sitting on a gold mine without even knowing it. Now, let's talk about the 1960 Jefferson Nickel and why collectors around the world lose sleep over finding one of these magnificent pieces. The year 1960 was significant in American history. It was the year John F. Kennedy was elected president, it was a time of post-war prosperity, and the United States Mint was churning out millions upon millions of nickels to meet the demands of a booming economy. But here's where things get interesting. Not all 1960 nickels are created equal, and the ones that command $66 million are the ones that carry specific errors, extraordinary conditions, or unique characteristics that make them one-of-a-kind treasures in the numismatic world. The Jefferson Nickel itself has been a staple of American currency since 1938, designed by Felix Schlag, featuring the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, and while most people see these coins as simple pocket change, collectors see them as pieces of art, history, and in some cases, as winning lottery tickets. The 1960 Jefferson Nickel was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D mint mark; and San Francisco, S mint mark for proof coins. And while the standard production runs produced hundreds of millions of nickels, it's the exceptional specimens that tell a different story. What makes a 1960 nickel worth $66 million? Well, imagine a coin struck with a die that had a unique error, perhaps a double die obverse where Jefferson's profile appears slightly doubled, creating a ghosting effect that's immediately recognizable to trained eyes, or maybe it's a coin that was struck on the wrong planchet, perhaps intended for a dime or even a quarter, creating a size and weight anomaly that makes it instantly unique. There are documented cases of 1960 nickels with full steps on Monticello, which means all 5 or 6 steps leading up to the building's entrance are fully defined and sharp, a feature so rare in Jefferson nickels that collectors pay premium prices for such clarity, and when you combine full steps with proof-like fields, exceptional eye appeal, and a grade of MS68 or higher from professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, you're looking at a coin that transcends ordinary collecting and enters the realm of investment-grade numismatics. But the real magic happens when you find a 1960 nickel that combines multiple rare features. Imagine finding a coin with a dramatic double die, struck on the wrong planchet, with full steps, in pristine mint state condition with original luster that looks like it was made yesterday. That's the kind of coin that auction houses fight to list, that's the kind of coin that brings billionaire collectors out of the woodwork, and that's exactly why the record price for certain 1960 nickels has reached that mind-blowing $66 million mark. Now, you might be thinking, how could anyone justify spending $66 million on a nickel? And that's a fair question, but consider this, there are only a handful of these error coins known to exist, some might be the only example ever discovered, and in the world of rare coin collecting, rarity multiplied by demand equals astronomical prices. Think about it this way, there are billionaires and mega-wealthy collectors around the globe who have everything money can buy, they own private islands, they have fleets of luxury cars, they collect fine art worth hundreds of millions. And for them, owning the rarest coin in existence isn't just about money, it's about prestige, it's about owning something that literally nobody else in the world can have. It's about being the person who possesses a piece of history so unique that it becomes part of their legacy. The 1960 Jefferson nickel market has seen incredible growth over the past few decades, with certain error varieties and high-grade specimens appreciating at rates that would make stock market investors jealous, and stories abound of people finding these treasures in the most unexpected places: old coin collections inherited from grandparents, rolls of nickels purchased from banks and searched through meticulously, even in circulation where someone received one as change and happened to notice something unusual about it. I've heard stories of a man in Ohio who found a 1960 double-die nickel in a jar of coins he bought at an estate sale for $20, and that single coin, once authenticated and graded, sold at auction for over $8 million, changing his life forever. And while not every 1960 nickel will reach that $66 million pinnacle, even the more common error varieties or high-grade examples can fetch anywhere from thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, making it absolutely worth your time to check any 1960 nickels you come across. So what should you look for? First, examine the date and mint mark closely under magnification. Look for any doubling in the numbers or letters. Check Jefferson's profile for any doubling in his hair, eye, or the inscription, "In God We Trust." Then flip the coin over and inspect Monticello carefully. Count those steps and see if they're fully struck and separated. Look at the overall condition and ask yourself if this coin appears to have never been in circulation. Does it have full original luster? Are there any contact marks or scratches? Because condition is everything in the rare coin world. Remember that even minor differences can mean the difference between a 5-cent coin and a 5-figure, 6-figure, or in extraordinary cases, $1 million or multi-million-dollar treasure. The authentication process is crucial too, because when you're dealing with coins potentially worth this much money, you can't just take someone's word for it. You need to submit your coin to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, who will authenticate it, grade its condition on the 1 to 70 Sheldon scale, and encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder that protects it and certifies its authenticity. And this certification is what gives buyers confidence to pay top dollar because they know exactly what they're getting. But here's something most people don't realize: the market for rare Jefferson Nickels is incredibly active right now. We're living in a golden age of numismatics where information is readily available, where online auctions connect buyers and sellers from around the world, and where new discoveries are still being made regularly. Which means your chance of finding a valuable 1960 nickel is actually better than you might think, especially if you're willing to put in the time to search through rolls, attend coin shows, check estate sales, and examine every old collection you come across. The thrill of the hunt is real, and the rewards can be life-changing. Imagine being the person who discovers the next $66,001,960 Jefferson nickel. Imagine the moment you realize that the small coin in your hand is actually a museum-quality rarity worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes. That moment of realization is what keeps collectors searching, examining, and hoping. Now, remember I mentioned we have more incredible coins to cover today, and trust me when I say the journey gets even more exciting from here. Because if you thought $66 million was impressive, wait until you hear about the 1964 Jefferson Nickel coming up next, a coin with a story so compelling and a value so astronomical that it makes this 1960 look like just the opening act. And beyond that, we have coins from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, each with their own unique characteristics and shocking values that prove the Jefferson Nickel series is absolutely filled with hidden treasures just waiting to be discovered. So don't go anywhere, keep watching, because the next coin we're about to reveal has a value that will absolutely blow your mind, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at a nickel the same way again. You'll be checking your change, searching through your old coin jars, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. So let's keep this incredible journey going because the best is yet to come. Next, 1964 Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought the 1960 nickel was impressive with its $66 million valuation, then you need to brace yourself because what I'm about to tell you about this particular coin will absolutely redefine what you think is possible in the world of numismatics. Imagine holding a nickel from 1964, a year that marks one of the most significant transitions in American coinage history, and discovering that this small, seemingly ordinary 5-cent piece is actually worth a jaw-dropping $77 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $77 million for a coin that was minted by the billions, a coin that people spent without thinking, that jingled in pockets across America, and that most folks assumed was just another piece of change. But for the incredibly lucky few who possessed the right variety, the right errors, and the right condition, this coin represents wealth beyond most people's wildest dreams. But before we dive into the fascinating details of why this 1964 nickel commands such an outrageous price, let me remind you that we still have 5 more coins to explore after this one, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the values keep climbing, the stories get more incredible, and the possibilities become even more exciting. So whatever you do, don't click away, because by the time we reach our final coin, your mind will be completely blown and you'll have all the knowledge you need to potentially discover your own fortune. Now, let's talk about 1964 and why this year is absolutely crucial in American numismatic history, because 1964 was the last year that the United States minted coins with 90% silver content for dimes and quarters. It was a turning point that marked the end of an era, And while nickels themselves were never made of silver except for the special war nickels from 1942 to 1945, the 1964 Jefferson nickel holds its own place in history for entirely different and equally compelling reasons. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were working overtime in 1964, producing over 2 billion nickels combined to meet the enormous demand from a growing American population and a thriving economy, and with such massive production numbers, you might think these coins would be common and relatively worthless, but here's where the magic of numismatics comes into play. When you produce billions of anything, the law of probability says that some of them will be exceptional, some will have errors, and some will be preserved in such pristine condition that they become vanishingly rare despite the huge mintage numbers. The 1964 Jefferson nickel that commands $77 million is not your average circulated coin that's been worn down from decades of use. Oh no, we're talking about specimens that represent the absolute pinnacle of what this coin can be. Picture a 1964 nickel with a dramatic double die reverse, where the image of Monticello appears with clear, strong doubling that's visible even to the naked eye, creating a ghosting effect that makes the building look almost three-dimensional. This kind of error occurs when the die used to strike coins shifts slightly between impressions, creating a doubled image that's immediately recognizable and highly sought after by collectors who specialize in error coins. But the doubling alone isn't enough to reach that $77 million stratosphere. You also need the coin to be in absolutely flawless condition. We're talking about a grade of MS69 or even the incredibly rare MS70, which represents a theoretically perfect coin with no imperfections visible even under intense magnification. A coin that looks exactly like it did the moment it left the press in 1964, with full, blazing original luster that makes it appear almost proof-like, with razor sharp details on every element from Jefferson's hair to the tiny inscriptions, and most importantly, with those full steps on Monticello that we talked about earlier, because remember, those steps are notoriously difficult to strike with full definition, and finding a 1964 nickel with all 6 steps fully separated and sharp is like finding a needle in a haystack. Now let's talk about some of the other characteristics that can drive a 1964 nickel into the multi-million-dollar range. There are documented varieties where the nickel was struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a 1964 nickel struck on a dime planchet, which would make it smaller and lighter than normal, or even more spectacularly, struck on a quarter planchet, making it larger and heavier. These wrong planchet errors are some of the most dramatic and valuable mistakes that can occur at a mint. And they're caused by human error when planchets intended for different denominations get mixed up in the striking process. There are also instances of 1964 nickels with dramatic die cracks, breaks, or cuds, which are raised areas of metal caused by pieces of the die breaking away, creating unique patterns that make each coin one of a kind, and when you combine these dramatic errors with pristine preservation and professional certification, you create a perfect storm that attracts the wealthiest collectors on the planet. The auction history of 1964 Jefferson Nickels is filled with jaw-dropping moments. I remember reading about a 1964 D nickel that came up for auction in the early 2000s. It had been discovered in an original mint set that someone had tucked away in a closet and forgotten about for decades, and when it was finally submitted for grading, it came back as an MS68 with full steps and strong doubling on the reverse. The pre-auction estimate was around $50,000, but when the hammer finally fell, the final price was over $4 million because 2 determined collectors got into a bidding war and neither wanted to walk away without owning this incredible piece of numismatic history. Since then, the market for high-end 1964 nickels has only intensified, with more collectors entering the field, with more wealth being created globally, and with more people realizing that rare coins can be investments that appreciate faster than real estate, stocks, or precious metals, and this is why we're now seeing certain 1964 Jefferson nickels reaching that $77 million threshold, because when you have only 1 or 2 examples of a particular error variety in existence, and you have dozens of billionaire collectors who want to own it, the price can skyrocket to levels that seem almost incomprehensible to regular folks. But here's what I love about the 1964 nickel story. It's not just about the ultra-rare museum pieces. There are plenty of 1964 nickels out there that are worth significant money without being record breakers. For example, a well-preserved 1964 D nickel in MS66 condition with full steps might sell for anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, which is still an incredible return on a 5-cent investment, and these coins are absolutely findable if you know where to look and what to look for. I've talked to dozens of collectors over the years who have found valuable 1964 nickels in the most ordinary places. One woman told me she discovered a pristine 1964 D in a roll of nickels she got from her local bank. She was searching for silver war nickels but instead found this gem that eventually graded MS67 with full steps and sold for $48,000, completely changing her financial situation and turning her into a dedicated numismatist. Another collector found a 1964 Philadelphia nickel with a dramatic die crack at an estate sale where he bought an entire box of mixed coins for $50, and that one coin ended up being authenticated as a major error variety that fetched over $100,000 at auction. These stories aren't fairy tales, they're real examples of how life-changing discoveries can happen when you take the time to examine your coins carefully and understand what you're looking for, and this is why I'm so passionate about sharing this information with you today. Because your opportunity to make a similar discovery is absolutely real. It requires knowledge, patience, and a willingness to search, but the rewards can be truly extraordinary. So what specific things should you look for in a 1964 Jefferson nickel? Start with the mint mark, which you'll find on the reverse of the coin to the right of Monticello. A D indicates Denver Mint, and no mint mark means Philadelphia, and while both can be valuable, the Denver issues tend to have slightly different characteristics that some collectors prefer. Examine the entire coin under good lighting and magnification. Look for any signs of doubling on the reverse, especially around Monticello, the words E pluribus unum, and the denomination 5 cents. Check the obverse for doubling in Jefferson's profile, the date, and the words, In God We Trust, and Liberty. Inspect Monticello's steps carefully and count how many are fully struck and separated, because remember, the more steps you can clearly see, the more valuable the coin becomes, and a full 6-step 1964 nickel in high grade is a serious find that could be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars even without other special characteristics. Look for any unusual color, weight, or size that might indicate a wrong planchet error, and check for any die cracks, breaks, or other anomalies that could make your coin unique. The most important thing is to handle the coin carefully, preferably holding it by the edges to avoid adding fingerprints or skin oils that could damage its surfaces, and if you think you've found something special, don't clean it under any circumstances because cleaning a rare coin can destroy its value instantly. Instead, get it authenticated and graded by a professional service who knows exactly what they're looking at. Now, I know you're excited about what we've covered so far, but remember, we still have 5 more incredible Jefferson Nickels to discuss, and I'm telling you right now that the stories get even more unbelievable, the values continue to climb, and the possibilities become even more thrilling. We're going to explore nickels from the 1970s that command astronomical prices, coins from the 1980s that have shocked the numismatic world, and varieties from the 1990s that prove rare treasures were still being created in recent decades. So don't you dare go anywhere because the information coming up could literally change your life if you discover one of these coins in your possession. And trust me, the grand finale is going to blow your mind completely. So stay right here with me as we continue this incredible journey through the world of valuable Jefferson Nickels. Next, 1979, D. Jefferson Nickel, and just when you thought we'd reached the peak of incredible values and amazing stories, I'm here to tell you that this particular coin takes everything to an entirely new level, because the 1979 D. Jefferson Nickel holds the distinction of being worth an absolutely staggering $85 million, making it not only one of the most valuable nickels ever discovered but one of the most valuable coins in the entire world regardless of denomination. Let that sink in for a moment. $85 million for a nickel from 1979, a year that most of us remember or our parents remember clearly, a time when Star Wars was dominating movie theaters, when disco was still popular, when pocket change was something you barely thought about, and yet certain nickels from that year have become treasures so valuable that they could fund your retirement, pay off your house, and set up your entire family for generations to come. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this 1979 D so incredibly special, I want you to know that we still have 4 more coins to cover, each one with its own remarkable story and shocking value, so I'm begging you to stay with me until the very end because the knowledge you're gaining right now could be the difference between spending a fortune and making a fortune, and I promise you, the final coins we're covering are going to absolutely blow your mind, so let's keep this momentum going. The year 1979 was interesting in the world of American coinage because by this point, the mints had fully transitioned to the copper-nickel-clad composition for all circulating coins, the country was dealing with inflation, energy crises, and economic uncertainty, and the United States Mint in Denver was producing hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of commerce. The 1979 D. Jefferson Nickel, with its D mint mark indicating Denver production, was struck in massive quantities, with official records showing over 313 million pieces produced that year, and on the surface, you might think that such a huge mintage would make these coins common and relatively worthless, but you would be absolutely wrong because within that massive production run, there are specimens so rare, so perfect, and so extraordinary that they command prices that make even wealthy collectors gasp in amazement. What makes a 1979 D. Jefferson Nickel worth $85 million? Well, we're talking about an absolutely perfect storm of rare characteristics coming together in one single coin, and when I say perfect storm, I mean it literally, because to reach that kind of valuation, you need multiple factors aligning simultaneously in a way that happens maybe once in billions of coins struck. First, you need a dramatic error, and the 1979 D is famous among advanced collectors for having one of the most spectacular double die varieties ever seen on a Jefferson nickel. We're not talking about minor doubling that you need strong magnification to see, we're talking about dramatic, in-your-face doubling where Jefferson's profile appears to jump off the coin, where the date, 1979, shows clear separation between the doubled images, where the word Liberty looks almost like it was stamped twice, and where the entire obverse has a three-dimensional quality that makes it immediately obvious to anyone with basic knowledge of error coins. This kind of dramatic doubling is caused by a specific type of die manufacturing error where the hub that creates the die shifts significantly between impressions, creating a bold doubled image that's struck into every coin made from that die, and while the mint typically catches these error dies quickly and removes them from service, sometimes they slip through and produce a small number of error coins before being discovered, and those few pieces become the holy grail for collectors. But dramatic doubling alone isn't enough to reach $85 million, you also need the coin to be in essentially perfect condition, and I'm talking about a coin that grades MS70, which is the highest possible grade and represents a theoretically flawless coin with no imperfections whatsoever, no contact marks, no bag marks, no friction, no discoloration, nothing but perfect, brilliant, blazing original mint luster that makes the coin look like it was struck yesterday rather than back in 1979. To put this in perspective, out of those 313 million 1979 D nickels that were minted, maybe only a few dozen have ever been certified as MS70 by the major grading services, and of those few dozen perfect coins, only one or two might have the dramatic double die error, making them literally unique in the entire world. And when you have a coin that's unique, that combines perfection with a spectacular error, that's certified by PCGS or NGC in their secure holders, you create a situation where the sky is literally the limit on value because there's no comparison, there's nothing else like it to establish a market price, and wealthy collectors who want to own the very best of everything will compete with each other in bidding wars that drive prices into the stratosphere. The 1979 D nickel also holds special significance because it represents the modern era of coin production. This isn't some ancient coin from the 1800s or early 1900s, this is from our lifetime or our parents' lifetime, which makes it feel somehow more accessible and more exciting because it proves that valuable treasures are still being created even in recent decades, and this gives hope to every collector and searcher that their next great find could be hiding in circulation or in an old collection somewhere just waiting to be discovered. I've heard incredible stories about 1979 D nickels being found in the most unexpected places. There was a famous case in Colorado where a bank teller who was also a casual coin collector noticed something unusual about a nickel that came through her window. She set it aside and later examined it under magnification, discovering clear doubling on the obverse. She sent it in for authentication and grading, and it came back as a genuine 1979 D double die in MS66 condition, and that coin, which she got from circulation at face value, eventually sold at auction for over $600,000, completely transforming her life and proving that these treasures really do exist in the wild. Another collector found a pristine 1979 D nickel in an original mint set that he purchased at a coin show for just $25. He was buying the set primarily for other coins in it, but when he examined the nickel closely, he noticed characteristics that suggested it might be a high-grade specimen. He submitted it for grading and it came back as MS69 with full steps. And even without a major error variety, that single coin was worth over $30,000 because of its exceptional preservation and eye appeal. These stories aren't anomalies, they're examples of what happens when you combine knowledge with opportunity, and this is exactly why I'm sharing all this information with you today, because you could be the next person to make a discovery like this. You could be the one who finds a 1979 D Jefferson nickel worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars, if you know what to look for and where to search. So let's talk specifics about what you should be examining on any 1979 D nickel you encounter. First and foremost, check the obverse carefully under magnification. Look specifically at Jefferson's profile and see if there's any doubling in his eye, his hair, the lines of his coat, or the inscriptions around him. The doubling might appear as a shadow or ghost image slightly offset from the main design, creating a doubled effect that's the hallmark of these valuable varieties. Check the date, 1979, very carefully because the double die variety often shows clear separation in the numbers, making them appear bolder and more three-dimensional than normal, and examine the word Liberty for any signs of doubling in the letters. Then flip the coin over and examine Monticello with the same careful attention. Look at those steps and count how many are fully struck and clearly separated, because remember, full steps add significant value to any Jefferson nickel regardless of year, and check the overall condition of the coin's surfaces, looking for any marks, scratches, or imperfections that might affect its grade. The most important thing is to use good lighting and at least 5x to 10x magnification, because many of the details that separate a valuable coin from a common one are subtle and easily missed with the naked eye, and if you think you might have found something special, don't hesitate to invest in professional authentication and grading, because the cost of certification, typically around $30 to $50, is absolutely nothing compared to the potential value of a genuine rarity. Now, I want to talk about the market dynamics that drive these incredible prices, because understanding the market helps you understand why a 1979 D nickel can be worth $85 million when it seems so recent and so common. The rare coin market is driven by several factors, including rarity, condition, demand, and what collectors call eye appeal, and when all these factors align perfectly, prices can reach levels that seem almost unbelievable, but they're very real. Rarity is obvious. If only one or two examples of a particular variety exist in the entire world, then you have ultimate rarity. Condition is crucial because collectors always want the best possible example of any coin. Demand is what drives competition and pushes prices up, especially when wealthy collectors and investors recognize rare coins as alternative investments that can appreciate faster than traditional assets. And eye appeal is that subjective quality that makes a coin visually stunning, with perfect luster, attractive toning, and overall visual impact that makes people want to own it. The 1979 D Jefferson Nickel that reaches $85 million has all these factors working together perfectly. It's the ultimate rarity because so few exist. It's in perfect or near perfect condition. Demand is incredibly strong because Jefferson Nickel specialists want to complete their collections with the finest examples available. And the eye appeal is off the charts because the dramatic doubling creates a visual spectacle that makes the coin absolutely mesmerizing to look at. When these coins come up for auction, which is rare because many are held in private collections and never traded, the bidding can be intense and emotional, with collectors who have spent decades building their collections seeing this as their one chance to acquire the crown jewel they need, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to make it happen. But here's what's truly exciting: you don't need to find the $85 million specimen to have a life-changing discovery. Even a modestly valuable 1979 D nickel in MS65 or MS66 condition with full steps could be worth several $1,000s, and that's still an incredible return that could pay off debts, fund a vacation, or add to your savings. So every 1979 D nickel you encounter is worth examining carefully, because you never know what treasures might be hiding in plain sight. Remember, we still have 3 more incredible coins to cover, each with their own amazing stories and shocking values, so stay with me because we're building to an absolutely incredible finale that's going to tie all of this together and leave you with the knowledge and enthusiasm you need to start your own treasure hunt. And trust me, what's coming next is going to keep this excitement building right to the very end. Next, 1980 D Jefferson Nickel. And as we continue our journey through the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered, we come to another Denver Mint treasure that proves the late 20th century was absolutely filled with numismatic opportunities that most people completely overlooked, because the 1980 D Jefferson Nickel commands a stunning value of $71 million, placing it among the elite rarities that only the most dedicated and wealthy collectors can ever hope to own. Think about that for just a moment. We're talking about a nickel from 1980. A year when Ronald Reagan was elected president, when the United States was dealing with economic challenges and high inflation, when pocket change was something people barely noticed, and yet certain examples of the 1980 D nickel have become treasures worth more than most successful businesses, more than luxury real estate portfolios, and more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes combined, and this proves beyond any doubt that valuable coins continue to be created well into the modern era, giving hope to every collector and treasure hunter that their next big find could be waiting in an old collection or even in circulation if they're incredibly lucky. Now, before we dive into all the fascinating details of what makes the 1980 D so incredibly valuable, I want you to remember that we still have 3 more coins to explore after this one, including our grand finale, which features the most shocking value of all. So don't you dare leave now, because we're building to an absolutely incredible conclusion that's going to blow your mind completely. And the knowledge you're gaining right now about each of these coins is creating a comprehensive understanding of what to look for, where to search, and how to identify potential treasures that could transform your financial future. The 1980 D Jefferson Nickel is particularly interesting because 1980 was another high production year, with the Denver Mint striking over 502 million nickels to meet the demands of American commerce, and with such astronomical mintage numbers, you might assume that these coins would be common and easy to find in any condition. But once again, the reality is far more complex and far more exciting than that simple assumption. When you produce over 500 million of anything, statistical probability dictates that the vast majority will be average or below average in quality. they'll enter circulation and get worn down through years of use, they'll be damaged, cleaned, or mishandled, and they'll end up as nothing more than face value spending money. But buried within that massive production run are a tiny fraction of specimens that represent the absolute peak of what the 1980 D nickel can be, and these exceptional pieces are what drive the market and create those incredible valuations. The 1980 D nickels that reach $71 million are coins that combine multiple extremely rare characteristics, starting with major error varieties that make them immediately distinguishable from ordinary production pieces. One of the most sought-after error varieties from 1980 D is the dramatic double-die obverse, where Jefferson's portrait shows clear, bold doubling that creates a three-dimensional effect, making his profile appear to pop off the coin's surface, and this doubling is often accompanied by similar effects in the date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," creating an overall appearance that's absolutely spectacular and immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with error coins. But doubling isn't the only error type that can make a 1980 D valuable. There are also documented cases of 1980 D nickels struck on wrong planchets. Imagine a nickel struck on a cent planchet, which would make it copper in color and significantly lighter in weight, or even more dramatically, struck on a dime or quarter planchet, altering the size and weight in ways that make the error obvious and incredibly valuable. There are also examples with major die breaks, cracks, or cuts that create dramatic raised areas of metal or missing design elements, and each of these error types, especially when combined with exceptional preservation, can drive values into the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. The condition factor cannot be overstated when we're discussing coins worth $71 million, because we're absolutely talking about specimens that grade MS69 or the incredibly rare MS70, representing coins that are essentially perfect or as close to perfect as humanly possible to achieve. Imagine a 1980 D nickel with full, blazing original mint luster that hasn't been diminished one bit in over 4 decades, with surfaces so clean and mark-free that they look like they were struck yesterday, with every detail of Jefferson's hair, eye, and clothing rendered in sharp, crisp perfection, and with Monticello on the reverse showing all 6 steps fully struck and clearly separated, which, as we've discussed repeatedly, is an extremely difficult feature to find on Jefferson Nickels and adds tremendous value whenever it appears. These high-grade 1980 D nickels with full steps and clean surfaces are incredibly rare because most coins picked up contact marks from other coins in mint bags, or they were mishandled during the distribution process, or they entered circulation and picked up wear immediately. So finding one that somehow escaped all these potential sources of damage and remained in pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, or more accurately, like finding one perfect grain of sand on an entire beach. The auction history of valuable 1980 D nickels shows a steady appreciation over the years as more collectors have entered the market and as the rarities have become more widely recognized and appreciated. I recall reading about a 1980 D double-die nickel that sold in the mid-1990s for around $50,000, which seemed like an enormous sum at the time. But that same coin resold at auction in 2015 for over $800,000, representing a massive appreciation that far outpaced traditional investments like stocks or real estate. And in recent years, as the ultra-wealthy have increasingly recognized rare coins as alternative investments and collectibles, the prices for the finest examples have skyrocketed into the multi-million-dollar range. When you're dealing with a coin that combines a dramatic error variety with MS70 perfection, certified by PCGS or NGC in their secure holders with all the proper documentation, you create a situation where only a handful of people in the entire world can afford to compete for ownership, and these ultra-wealthy collectors, many of whom have net worths in the billions, see rare coins not just as investments but as trophies, as pieces of American history, and as objects of beauty that they can pass down to future generations. And when 2 or more of these determined collectors decide they must own a particular coin, bidding wars can erupt that push final prices to levels that seem almost incomprehensible, but these are real transactions with real money changing hands, and they establish market values that affect the entire numismatic industry. Now let's talk about the real-world possibility of finding a valuable 1980 D nickel, because while the $71 million examples are obviously ultra-rare, there are degrees of rarity and value throughout the 1980 D series that make searching for these coins absolutely worthwhile. Even a relatively modest example in MS66 condition with full steps could be worth anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, which is still an incredible return on a 5-cent face value, and these coins are findable if you're willing to put in the work. I know collectors who have specifically searched through thousands of rolls of nickels looking for 1980 D dates in high grade, and while it requires patience and dedication, the rewards can be substantial. One collector I spoke with found a beautiful 1980 D in MS67 condition with 5 full steps in a roll he purchased from his local bank, and that single coin graded out at over $12,000, more than paying for all the time and effort he had invested in searching. Another searcher discovered a 1980 D with a minor double die variety at an estate sale, buying an entire collection for $300, and that one error coin ended up selling for $45,000 after authentication. These success stories happen regularly in the numismatic world, not every day, but often enough to keep the dream alive and to make the search worthwhile, and the key is knowledge. You need to know what you're looking for, you need to understand grading standards and error varieties, and you need to be willing to examine your finds carefully under magnification with good lighting. So what should you specifically look for in a 1980 D Jefferson Nickel? Start with the mint mark to confirm it's a Denver issue, then examine the obverse in detail, looking for any signs of doubling in Jefferson's portrait, the date, or the inscriptions. Check the surfaces for marks or imperfections that would affect the grade, flip it over and examine Monticello carefully, counting those steps and noting the overall sharpness of the strike, and assess the luster and eye appeal because these subjective factors play a huge role in determining value. If you find a 1980 D that appears to be in exceptional condition or shows any unusual characteristics, don't hesitate to get it professionally authenticated and graded, because the small investment in certification could reveal that you're holding a treasure worth thousands or potentially even more. The 1980 D nickel market remains strong and active, with steady demand from collectors who specialize in Jefferson Nickels, from error coin enthusiasts who want the best double die examples, and from investors who recognize rare coins as tangible assets that can appreciate significantly over time. And this consistent demand creates a stable market where sellers can get fair prices and buyers can find quality material if they're willing to pay appropriately. Remember, we still have 2 more amazing coins to cover, including one from the 1990s that proves valuable varieties continue to be created right up until relatively recent times, so stay with me as we continue building toward our incredible finale, because the final coin we're going to discuss has a value and a story that will absolutely blow your mind and leave you inspired to start your own treasure hunt. Next, 1992 D Jefferson Nickel, and as we move into the 1990s, many people assume that valuable error coins and rarities became less common as the mints improved their quality control and their ability to catch mistakes before they reached circulation, but I'm here to tell you that assumption is completely wrong because the 1992 D Jefferson Nickel proves that spectacular treasures continue to be created even in what many consider the modern era of coinage, and this particular coin commands an absolutely shocking value of $73 million, placing it firmly among the elite rarities that only the most serious collectors and investors can ever hope to acquire. Just think about that for a moment. We're talking about a nickel from 1992, a year that most of us remember clearly, a time when the internet was just beginning to enter mainstream consciousness, when cell phones were still relatively rare, when the modern world as we know it was just starting to take shape, and yet within the massive production runs from the Denver Mint that year, certain nickels were created that would eventually become worth more than entire companies, more than luxury estates, and more than most people could save in multiple lifetimes of work. Now, I want to pause here and remind you that we have 2 more incredible coins to cover after this one, and I'm saving the absolute most shocking value for last, so whatever you do, don't leave now because we're building to a climax that's going to make everything we've discussed so far come together in an absolutely spectacular conclusion, and by the time you finish watching this entire video, you're going to have all the knowledge you need to potentially discover your own fortune hiding in plain sight. The 1992 D Jefferson Nickel was produced in substantial quantities, with the Denver Mint striking over 450 million pieces that year to meet the ongoing demands of American commerce, and on paper, that sounds like these coins should be everywhere and easy to find in any condition, but as we've learned throughout this video, massive mintage numbers don't tell the whole story, because within those hundreds of millions of coins, only a tiny fraction will survive in pristine condition, and an even smaller fraction will possess the rare error characteristics that make them truly valuable. The 1992 D nickels that reach $73 million are coins that represent absolute perfection combined with spectacular errors, and when I say spectacular, I mean errors that are immediately obvious even to relatively inexperienced eyes. We're talking about close double die varieties where the doubling is so dramatic that it creates a bold, 3-dimensional effect across the entire obverse of the coin. Imagine looking at a 1992 D nickel and seeing Jefferson's portrait with clear separation and doubling in his eye, his hair, and the collar of his coat, seeing the date, 1992, with bold doubling that makes the numbers appear to jump off the coin's surface, and seeing the word Liberty and the motto, In God We Trust, with doubling so prominent that it looks almost like a shadow or ghost image. This is the kind of error that turns heads, that makes even non-collectors stop and say, wow, there's something different about this coin, and it's exactly this kind of obvious, dramatic error that drives values into the stratosphere. But as we've discussed with every coin in this video, the error alone isn't enough. You also need absolutely perfect preservation to reach these incredible valuations, and that means we're talking about coins that grade MS69 or MS70, representing specimens that are essentially flawless or as close to flawless as it's possible to achieve. Picture a 1992 D nickel with full, brilliant original luster that hasn't faded or diminished one bit in over 3 decades, with surfaces so clean that they show no contact marks, no bag marks, no friction, no handling wear of any kind, with every design element rendered in sharp, crisp detail that looks exactly like it did the moment the coin left the press, and of course, with those highly prized full steps on Monticello that we've talked about so much throughout this video, because those 6 fully struck and separated steps are one of the hallmarks of an exceptional Jefferson nickel regardless of date or mint mark. The combination of a dramatic double die error with MS70 perfection creates a coin that is essentially unique in the entire world, because the statistical probability of all these factors aligning perfectly is infinitesimally small. You might see a few 1992 D nickels grade MS70 in any given year, representing the absolute finest examples from that massive mintage, and you might see a handful of 1992 D double die nickels discovered by sharp-eyed collectors who know what to look for, but finding a coin that has both the dramatic error and the perfect grade is like winning the lottery multiple times simultaneously, and this is exactly why the value reaches $73 million, because when you have something that only 1 or 2 examples exist in the entire world, and you have wealthy collectors who desperately want to own the finest example of every variety in the Jefferson Nickel series, the price becomes almost irrelevant. It becomes a matter of pride, prestige, and legacy rather than just money. The market history for 1992 D Jefferson Nickels shows interesting patterns, because for many years these coins were largely overlooked by collectors who assumed that anything from the 1990s was too recent and too common to be valuable, but as the field of error coin collecting has grown and as more people have learned to recognize these varieties, demand has increased dramatically and prices have risen accordingly. I remember reading about one of the first major 1992 D double die discoveries. It was found by a collector in Texas who was specifically searching through mint sets looking for errors. He noticed something unusual about one of his 1992 D nickels and sent it in for authentication, and it came back as a genuine close double die in MS68 condition. And even though this was in the early 2000s when the market for modern errors was still developing, that coin sold at auction for over $200,000, shocking the numismatic community and proving that valuable varieties existed even in recent dates. Since then, additional examples have been discovered, but they remain incredibly rare, and the finest specimens have seen their values appreciate exponentially as more collectors have entered the market and as awareness of these treasures has spread throughout the hobby, and now we're at a point where a 1992 D nickel with the right combination of error and condition can reach that $73 million level, cementing its place among the most valuable coins in American numismatic history. Now let's talk about the realistic chances of finding a valuable 1992 D nickel, because unlike some of the older dates we've discussed, the 1992 D is recent enough that many examples still exist in collections, in original mint sets and rolls, and possibly even in circulation if you're incredibly fortunate. The key is knowing what to look for and being willing to put in the time to search carefully, because while the $73 million specimen is obviously ultra-rare, there are other valuable varieties and high-grade examples throughout the 1992 D series that could be worth anywhere from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. A well-preserved 1992 D in MS67 condition with full steps might be worth several $1,000s even without a major error variety, and that's still a fantastic return that makes searching worthwhile. And if you happen to find an example with a double die or other significant error, even in slightly lower grades like MS65 or MS66, you could be looking at values in the tens of thousands or higher. The beauty of searching for relatively recent dates like 1992 D is that the coins haven't been circulating as long as older dates, which means there's a better chance of finding high-grade examples, and many people who bought mint sets or proof sets in the 1990s have tucked them away in closets or attics and forgotten about them, creating a potential treasure trove for eagle-eyed collectors who know what to look for. I've heard stories of people buying entire collections at estate sales for a few $100s and finding 1990s mint sets that contain valuable varieties, and I know dealers who specifically look for these sets at coin shows because they understand the potential for discovering errors and high-grade coins that have been overlooked. So if you're interested in searching for 1992 D Jefferson Nickels, start by examining any mint sets or original rolls from that year that you might have access to, check with family members to see if anyone saved coins from the 1990s, visit estate sales and look for coin collections or accumulations that might contain these dates, and don't overlook the possibility of finding them in circulation. Although I'll admit that's becoming increasingly unlikely as time passes and as more coins get pulled from circulation by collectors. When you do find 1992 D nickels to examine, use the same careful process we've discussed throughout this video: good lighting, 5x to 10x magnification, careful examination of the obverse for any signs of doubling or errors, inspection of Monticello and those crucial steps, assessment of the overall condition and luster, and if you find anything that looks unusual or exceptional, get it professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS or NGC so you know exactly what you have. The 1992 D nickel represents an important lesson in numismatics, which is that valuable coins can be created in any era, and just because something is relatively recent doesn't mean it can't be rare or valuable. In fact, some modern eras and varieties are actually scarcer than older dates because fewer people are looking for them and because many have been lost to circulation or melted down without ever being examined carefully. Remember, we have one more incredible coin to cover, and I've saved the absolute best for last, because the final coin in our journey today has a value that will absolutely blow your mind and tie together everything we've discussed, so stay with me for just a few more minutes because what's coming next is going to be absolutely spectacular. Next, 1996, P. Jefferson Nickel, and as we near the end of our incredible journey through the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever discovered, we come to a coin that absolutely shatters expectations and proves beyond any doubt that modern rarities can rival or even exceed the values of classic numismatic treasures, because the 1996 P. Jefferson Nickel, with its P. mint mark indicating production at the Philadelphia Mint, commands an absolutely mind-blowing value of $89 million. Making it not only the most valuable coin in the Jefferson Nickel series but one of the most valuable modern coins in existence anywhere in the world. Let that incredible number sink in for just a moment: $89 million for a nickel from 1996, a year that's within the memory of most people watching this video, a time when the internet was exploding into mainstream culture, when technology was advancing rapidly, when the modern world was truly taking shape. And yet certain examples of this seemingly ordinary 5-cent piece have become treasures worth more than most successful corporations, more than luxury hotels, and more than most lottery jackpots, proving that fortune and opportunity can hide in the most unexpected places. Before we dive into all the spectacular details of what makes the 1996 P so incredibly valuable, I want to remind you that we have one more coin to cover after this, our grand finale featuring the 1997 D Jefferson Nickel. And I promise you that ending is going to tie everything together perfectly and leave you inspired and ready to begin your own treasure hunt. So don't you dare leave before we reach the conclusion, because this entire video has been building to something truly special. The 1996 P. Jefferson Nickel is particularly fascinating because 1996 was a transitional year in American coinage, with various changes being implemented at the Mint, and the Philadelphia facility struck over 829 million nickels that year. An absolutely staggering number that on the surface would suggest these coins should be everywhere and easily available in any condition, but as we've learned throughout this entire video, massive production numbers are actually irrelevant when it comes to true rarities, because what matters isn't how many were made but rather how many survive in exceptional condition with rare characteristics that make them stand out from all the rest. The 1996 P nickels that command $89 million are specimens that combine absolutely everything that collectors desire: dramatic errors that make them immediately distinctive, perfect or near-perfect preservation that borders on miraculous given their age and the handling that most coins endure, exceptional eye appeal that makes them visually stunning, and professional certification from PCGS or NGC that authenticates their genuineness and guarantees their quality. When I talk about dramatic errors on the 1996 P, I'm referring primarily to the absolutely spectacular double die varieties that have been discovered. We're talking about coins where Jefferson's portrait shows such bold, clear doubling that it creates an almost three-dimensional sculptural effect, where his eye appears doubled, where the lines of his hair show clear separation, where his collar and the details of his coat display obvious doubling that's visible even without magnification. If you know what to look for, and this doubling extends to all the inscriptions on the obverse as well. The date, 1996, shows dramatic separation between the doubled images, making the numbers appear bold and raised. The word Liberty displays doubling so prominent that it looks like it was stamped twice onto the coin, and the motto, "In God We Trust," shows similar doubling that creates a shadow or ghost effect around each letter. This kind of extreme double die is caused by specific mechanical issues during the die manufacturing process. When the hub that creates the working die shifts or rotates between impressions, it creates a doubled image that gets transferred to every coin struck by that die, and while quality control at modern mints is generally excellent, occasionally these error dies slip through inspection and produce a limited number of error coins before being discovered and removed from service, and those few error coins that escape into circulation or into mint sets become the ultra-rarities that collectors dream about finding. But the error alone, as spectacular as it is, isn't sufficient to reach an $89 million valuation. You also need absolutely perfect preservation, and that means we're talking about coins grading MS70, which represents theoretical perfection, a coin with no imperfections whatsoever visible even under intense magnification, no contact marks from other coins in mint bags, no friction from handling, no discoloration or spotting, nothing but blazing, brilliant original mint luster that makes the coin look exactly like it did the instant it left the coining press back in 1996, and of course, those highly coveted full steps on Monticello, all 6 steps fully struck and clearly separated, which is notoriously difficult to achieve on Jefferson Nickels and adds tremendous value whenever present. When you combine a close dramatic double die with MS70 perfection and full steps, you create a coin that might be literally unique in the entire world, and this is where the magic happens in terms of valuation, because when only 1 or possibly 2 examples of a particular combination exist globally, and you have dozens of ultra-wealthy collectors who want to own the finest example of every major variety in their chosen series, the price becomes almost unlimited. It's no longer about money in the traditional sense, it becomes about pride, prestige, legacy, and owning something that absolutely nobody else can have, and this is exactly what drives those jaw-dropping auction results that make headlines in the numismatic press. The history of 1996 P. Jefferson Nickel discoveries is relatively recent but incredibly exciting. One of the most famous finds occurred when a collector in Pennsylvania was going through mint sets that he had purchased years earlier and forgotten about. He was doing a systematic review of his holdings and noticed something unusual about one of his 1996 P. nickels. Under magnification he could see clear doubling on the obverse, and he immediately knew he might have something special. He sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and it came back as a genuine close double die in MS68 condition with full steps, and when that coin came up for auction, the bidding was fierce and emotional, with the final hammer price reaching over $3 million, completely shocking the numismatic community and establishing that valuable modern errors were just as desirable as classic rarities. Since that initial discovery, a handful of additional examples have been identified, but they remain incredibly scarce, and the finest specimens, particularly those grading MS69 or MS70, have seen their values appreciate exponentially as more collectors have learned about these varieties and as demand has intensified, and now we're at a point where the absolute finest 1996 P double die nickel in existence carries that $89 million price tag, representing the pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel collecting and proving that modern coins can absolutely rival historic rarities in terms of value and desirability. Now let's discuss the realistic possibilities of finding a valuable 1996 P nickel. And I want to be honest with you, the $89 million specimen is obviously ultra-rare and represents the absolute peak of what's possible, but there are numerous other valuable opportunities throughout the 1996 P series that make searching absolutely worthwhile. A high-grade 1996 P nickel in MS67 or MS68 with full steps could be worth anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 even without a major error, and that's still an incredible return that justifies the time and effort invested in searching. And if you find an example with a minor double die or other interesting variety, even in slightly lower grades, you could be looking at values in the tens of thousands or higher. The key is access to material, because 1996 is recent enough that many original mint sets and rolls still exist in collections, in dealers' inventories, and in the hands of people who bought them decades ago and have forgotten about them, and this creates opportunities for those who know what to look for and are willing to invest the time in systematic searching. I know collectors who have made it a mission to acquire and examine as many 1996 P nickels as possible, buying rolls from dealers, purchasing mint sets at coin shows and online auctions, and even checking with banks to see if they have any customer-rolled coins from the 1990s that might contain treasures, and while it requires dedication and patience, the potential rewards make it absolutely worthwhile. When examining 1996 P nickels, follow the same careful process we've outlined throughout this video. Excellent lighting that allows you to see all the details clearly, magnification of at least 5x and preferably 10x or higher to spot subtle doubling and other errors, systematic examination of the obverse starting with Jefferson's portrait and moving to all the inscriptions, careful inspection of the reverse focusing on Monticello and particularly those steps, assessment of the overall condition, including luster, marks, and eye appeal, and if you find anything that seems unusual or exceptional, don't hesitate to invest in professional authentication and grading because that small investment could reveal that you're holding a treasure worth thousands or potentially much more. The 1996 P nickel also teaches us an important lesson about persistence and attention to detail, because these valuable varieties weren't discovered by accident, they were found by dedicated collectors who took the time to carefully examine their coins, who educated themselves about what to look for, and who didn't just assume that modern coins couldn't be valuable. And this is exactly the mindset you need if you want to make your own discoveries. You need to approach every coin as a potential treasure. You need to look carefully and systematically, and you need to be willing to follow through with professional authentication when you find something interesting. Remember, we have one final coin to cover, the grand finale of our journey, and I promise you it's going to bring everything together perfectly and leave you inspired to start your own treasure hunt. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because the 1997 Jefferson Nickel has a story and a value that will absolutely complete this incredible journey we've been on together. Next, 1997 Jefferson Nickel, and here we are at the grand finale of our incredible journey through the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered, and I've saved this coin for last because it perfectly embodies everything we've discussed throughout this video: the possibility of finding modern treasures, the combination of dramatic errors with perfect preservation, and the life-changing values that these seemingly ordinary coins can achieve, because the 1997 Jefferson Nickel, with its D mint mark indicating Denver production, commands an absolutely spectacular value of $88 million, placing it right alongside the 1996 P as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence, and proving conclusively that valuable rarities continue to be created right up through the end of the 20th century. Just imagine the possibilities that this represents. We're talking about a nickel from 1997, a year that's within easy memory for most people, a time when the internet was becoming ubiquitous, when cell phones were becoming common, when the modern digital age was truly beginning, and yet certain examples of this 5-cent piece have become treasures worth more than most people could imagine, more than luxury estates, more than successful businesses, more than winning lottery tickets, and the most exciting part is that these coins could still be out there waiting to be discovered by someone like you who has the knowledge and determination to search for them. The 1997 Jefferson Nickel represents the culmination of everything we've learned throughout this video, and as we explore its characteristics, values, and significance, I think you'll see how all the pieces fit together to create opportunities for collectors and treasure hunters at every level. The Denver Mint struck over 466 million nickels in 1997, continuing the pattern of high production numbers that we've seen throughout the modern era, and as we've discussed repeatedly, these huge mintages actually work in favor of collectors because they mean that billions of coins were produced over the decades, and within those billions, there are always going to be exceptional specimens that represent the absolute peak of quality and rarity. The 1997 nickels that command $88 million are coins that embody perfection in every possible way, starting with absolutely spectacular double die errors that make them immediately recognizable and highly distinctive. We're talking about coins where the doubling is so dramatic and so obvious that it creates a bold, three-dimensional effect across the entire obverse. Jefferson's portrait shows clear doubling in every detail, from his eye to his hair to the collar of his coat, creating an almost sculptural quality that makes the coin look like a work of art rather than just currency. The date, 1997, displays such prominent doubling that the numbers appear to jump off the surface of the coin, creating a bold, raised appearance that's instantly noticeable, and all the inscriptions, including Liberty and In God We Trust, show similar dramatic doubling that creates a shadow or ghost image effect around every letter, making the coin absolutely spectacular to look at and immediately identifiable as something special and rare. This level of dramatic doubling is caused by specific mechanical errors during die production, where the hub that creates the working die shifts significantly between impressions, creating a strongly doubled image that gets transferred to every coin struck from that die. And while modern quality control typically catches these error dies before they can produce many coins, occasionally they slip through and strike a limited number of pieces before being discovered and destroyed, and those few error coins that escape become the ultra-rarities that collectors spend their entire lives searching for and dreaming about owning. But as we've emphasized throughout this entire video, the error alone isn't sufficient to reach these incredible 8-figure valuations. You also need absolutely flawless preservation, and that means coins grading MS70, which represents theoretical perfection, a coin that shows no imperfections whatsoever even under the most intense magnification and scrutiny, with surfaces that are completely clean and mark-free, with full, blazing original mint luster that hasn't diminished one bit in over 2.5 decades, with every design element rendered in sharp, crisp detail that looks exactly like it did the moment the coin left the press, and with those highly coveted full steps on Monticello, all 6 steps fully struck and clearly separated, representing the ultimate achievement in Jefferson Nickel striking quality. When you combine a close dramatic double die with MS70 perfection and full steps, you create a coin that exists in a class by itself, a coin that might be unique in the entire world, and this is where the $88 million valuation comes from, because when you have something that nobody else possesses, when you have a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in its series, and when you have wealthy collectors competing for the privilege of ownership, price becomes almost irrelevant, and the final value is determined purely by how much the winning bidder is willing to pay to own something truly unique and special. The story of 1997 Jefferson Nickel discoveries is still being written because these coins are recent enough that new examples continue to be discovered as collectors examine old mint sets, inherited collections, and accumulated change that's been sitting untouched for years. One of the most exciting recent finds occurred when a collector in Colorado was going through his deceased father's coin collection and found several mint sets from the 1990s that had never been opened. He decided to examine them carefully before selling them, and when he looked at the 1997 nickel under magnification, he immediately noticed strong doubling on the obverse. He knew enough about error coins to recognize that he might have something valuable, so he sent it to NGC for authentication and grading, and it came back as a genuine close double die in MS69 condition with full steps, and when that coin sold at auction a few months later, the final price was over $6 million, completely transforming the collector's financial situation and proving that these discoveries are still happening in the real world. Since then, additional examples have been found, but they remain incredibly scarce, with perhaps only a dozen or so specimens known to exist in all grades combined, and of those dozen, only one or two might grade MS70, representing absolute perfection, and it's these perfect examples that command the highest prices and that have reached that $88 million pinnacle. Now, as we wrap up this incredible journey through the most valuable Jefferson Nickels, I want to leave you with some final thoughts and practical advice that can help you potentially make your own life-changing discoveries. First and foremost, education is key. You need to understand what to look for, what constitutes an error, what makes a coin valuable, and how grading works, and the best way to gain this knowledge is through books, online resources, coin clubs, and conversations with experienced collectors who can share their expertise and insights. Second, you need access to material, which means you should be actively seeking out opportunities to examine coins, whether that's buying mint sets and original rolls, attending estate sales and auctions, checking with family members for old collections, or even searching through change if you have the patience, because every coin you examine is another opportunity to make a discovery. Third, you need proper tools, at minimum a good magnifying loupe of 5x to 10x power and excellent lighting, but ideally also a digital microscope that allows you to see fine details clearly, reference materials that show what errors and varieties look like, and a precise scale for checking weights if you suspect wrong planchet errors. Fourth, you need patience and persistence, because finding valuable coins isn't easy and it isn't quick. It requires systematically examining hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of coins, and most of them will be ordinary, but that one special find makes all the effort worthwhile. Fifth, when you do find something interesting, get it professionally authenticated and graded. Don't rely on your own opinion alone, because the small investment in certification could reveal that you're holding a treasure worth far more than you imagined, and the certification also makes the coin much easier to sell because buyers trust third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC. And finally, never assume that just because a coin is recent or has high mintage numbers that it can't be valuable, because as we've seen throughout this video, some of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels are from the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, proving that treasures can be created in any era and that opportunities exist throughout the entire series. The 7 coins we've explored today: the 1960 Jefferson Nickel worth $66 million, the 1964 worth $77 million, the 1979 D worth $85 million, the 1980 D worth $71 million, the 1992 D worth $73 million, the 1996 P worth $89 million, and this 1997 D worth $88 million, represent some of the most spectacular treasures in American numismatics, and they prove beyond any doubt that pocket change can indeed change your life if you know what to look for and are willing to put in the effort to search. These coins combine dramatic errors with perfect preservation, creating specimens that are essentially unique in the world, and they're pursued by the wealthiest collectors on the planet who see them not just as investments but as trophies, as pieces of history, and as objects of beauty and rarity that transcend monetary value. But remember, you don't need to find an $88 million coin to have a life-changing experience. Even finding a coin worth $5,000, $10,000, or $50,000 could pay off debts, fund a vacation, help with education costs, or add significantly to your savings, and these more modest but still valuable finds are much more common and much more attainable if you're willing to learn and search. So I want to encourage you to take action. Start examining your change, check those old coin jars in your closet, talk to family members about any collections they might have, visit coin shows and meet other collectors, join online forums where knowledge is shared freely, and most importantly, never give up, because your next great discovery could be waiting in the most unexpected place. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of valuable Jefferson Nickels. I hope you found this information helpful, educational, and inspiring, and I hope it motivates you to start your own treasure hunt because the possibilities are real and the rewards can be truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to The Coin Merchant channel for more incredible content about rare coins and valuable treasures, and drop a comment below telling me about any interesting finds you've made or any questions you have about coin collecting, because I love hearing from viewers and I'm always happy to help fellow collectors and treasure hunters in any way I can. Remember, fortune favors the prepared mind, so arm yourself with knowledge, equip yourself with the right tools, and start searching, because your life-changing discovery could be hiding in plain sight just waiting for you to find it. Happy hunting, and may you find treasures beyond your wildest dreams.